Um, is on page 11 out of the Chinese novel, in which, in such a school I was trained. I grew up believing that the novel has nothing to do with pure literature, so I taught by scholars the art of literature, so I was taught in something devised by men learning out of the brains of scholars came rules to control the rush of genius, but while a fountain of which has its source in deeper life. Genesis, great or less, is the spring in the art of sculptorship, classical or modern, into which the waters must be forced if scholars and critics were to be served. But the people of China did not serve the waters of the genius of the story gushed out as they would. However, the natural rocks allowed and the trees pursued, and only common people came and drank and found the rest and pleasure. For the novel in China was a particular product for the common people, and it was solely their property. The very language of the novel was their own language, and not the classical Wen Li, which was a language of literature and the scholars. Wen Li boards somewhat the same replaces to the language of the people of the ancient English of Chaucer does it to the English of today, although ironically enough, at one time when Li too was chronicler, but the scholars never kept pace with the living, changing speech of the people. They clung to an old vernacular until they had made a classic, while the running language of the people went on and left them far behind. Chinese novels then are in the Piahua, or simple talk of the people, and it's sort of offense to the old scholars, because it's recited in style so full of easy flow, reliability that it had no technique, no explanation in it. The scholar said I should pause to make concession of certain scholars who came to China from India, bearing as their gift their new religion, Buddhism, and the West. Protestantism was for a long time the enemy of the novel, but the origin of the Buddhists were wiser, but they came into China, they found literature already remote from the people, banking on the information of that period. Knowing the history of the six dayas, the professional men literature were even the observer not so much as they did had to say, sparing into the couplets the characters of their essays and their poems, and after their scorned all writings which did not conform to their own rules. Into this confident literature atmosphere came to the Buddhist translators with their great treasures of the free spirit. Some of them were Indian, but some of them were Chinese. They said frankly that their aim was not conformed to the ideas of the style of the literally meant, but to make clear and simple common people what they had to reach. They put the religious teachings into the common language at the language which the novel used, and because the people loved story, they took the story and make it means of teaching. The preference of Fa Su Ching, one of the most famous Buddhist books, says, when giving the words of gods, these words should be given for simply. This might be taken as the sole literary creed of Chinese novelists whom indeed gods were men and men were gods. For the Chinese novel was written primarily to amuse the common people, and when I say amuse, I do not mean only to make them laugh. Their laughter is only one of the aims of the Chinese novels. I mean amusement in the sense of forcing and accompanying the whole attention of the mind. I mean exciting the mind by pictures of life and what that life means. I mean encouraging the spirits not by rule of thumb. Talk about art, but the stories about the people in every age, and thus presenting to the people simply themselves. Even the Buddhists who came to tell about the gods found that the people understood gods better if they saw limbs working through ordinary folks like themselves. But the real reason why Chinese novel was written in the vernacular was because the common people could not read and write, and novel had to be written so that when it was read aloud it would be understood by the persons who could communicate only through spoken words. In a village of 200 souls perhaps, and only one man could read. And on holidays or on the evening when they work as was done, he read aloud to the people from some story. The writer of the Chinese now began in just this simple fashion, not to where people just took up a collection of pennies in somebody's cap or in a farmer's wife's bowl because the reader needed tea to wet his throat, perhaps to pay him for the time he would otherwise have spent at his silk looms or rush weaving. If his collections grew big enough, he gave up some of his regular work and became a professional storyteller. And the stories he read were the beginning of the novels. There were not many such stories written down, not nearly enough to last year in and year out for the people who had by nature, as the Chinese have, a strong love for the dramatic story. So the storytelling teller began to increase his stock. So he searched for dry animals of the history which the scholars had written. And for his fertile imagination, interrupted by long quantity of common people, he clothed long dead fingers with new flesh and made them live again. He found stories of court life entered and names of imperial those who had brought Thyras to ruin. He found as he traveled from village to village strange tales from his own time, which he wrote down. When he heard them, people told him experiences they have had, and he wrote these down too for other people and implemented them, but not with literary turns and phases, for the people cared nothing for these. No, he kept his audience always in mind, and he found that the style which they loved the best was one which they flowed easily along clearly, simply. The short words they were words by which themselves use every day with no other technique. The casual based description only enough to give vagueness to place or a person and never enough to delay the story. Nothing must delay the story. The story was that they wanted. All right.